You didn't plan this. Nobody plans this. You didn't wake up one morning and decide you wanted to break kneecaps for a living. It started smaller than that. Much smaller. A favor for a neighborhood guy who always had cash. A handshake that meant more than it should have. And then, before you understood what was happening, you were in. Not invited in. Just in. And the only door in this business that opens from both sides is the one you entered through. You grew up in a zip code where the rules were different. Not lawless. Just governed by different laws. The kind of block where the guy on the corner knew your mother's name and would walk you home if it was late, but would also make a phone call that ended careers if you looked at him wrong. You weren't afraid of him. That's the thing nobody outside understands. You respected him the way you respected gravity. He was just a force that existed, and you learned to move around it. You were 17 when Carmine first handed you $50 to stand outside a social club for 2 hours and tell him if anyone you didn't recognize came down the street. That was it. That was the whole job. You stood there with a Sprite, watched the block, went home with $50 in your pocket. It was more money than you'd made in any single day of your life up to that point. The second time he called, you didn't hesitate. And that hesitation you didn't feel, that was the moment your future was decided. You just didn't know it yet. Nobody gives you a speech. There's no ceremony, no oath, no room full of men in suits welcoming you formally to anything. It's gradual in the way that erosion is gradual. Nothing dramatic, just steady pressure until the landscape is unrecognizable. 6 months after standing outside that social club, you're driving a car, while 2 men you've never been introduced to have a conversation in the back seat. 3 months after that, you're collecting envelopes from restaurant owners and dry cleaners on a Tuesday afternoon, counting the cash, handing it up the chain. Each step feels small because you're looking at the step, not the distance you've traveled. By the time Carmine sits across from you at a back booth in a place that doesn't have a sign on the door and says the words you've been circling for 18 months, you already know what your answer is. You say yes. You say yes because the money is real and the respect is real, and the alternative, the warehouse job, the $12 an hour life, the slow grind of nobody looking at you, feels like a sentence worse than anything a judge could hand down. You say yes because you're 20 years old, and 20-year-olds are magnificent at not seeing consequences. The thing about a door that only opens from the outside is that it looks like every other door until you're already through it. Your official title doesn't exist on any organizational chart. In the street, they call you an enforcer, but that word carries Hollywood weight that the actual job doesn't. The actual job is closer to a repossession agent who doesn't file paperwork. A man borrowed money and hasn't paid. You go talk to him. That's the sanitized version. The real version is that you go to wherever he is, his business, his home, the parking lot of his kid's school, and you have a conversation that makes the debt feel very real and very present in a way that a phone call never could. Most of the time, that's enough. Most of the time, the conversation is the whole job. People pay. People find money they claimed they didn't have. Fear is an extraordinary motivator, and your presence, calm, unhurried, specific, does most of the work before you say a word. But not always. There are men who push back. Men who've convinced themselves that if they're aggressive enough, loud enough, that you'll leave and send someone else. You don't leave. You don't send someone else. And afterward, driving back to report the collection, you don't feel what you expected to feel. You feel almost nothing at all. That nothingness is not relief. It's something you'll spend years trying to understand. The money is significant. Not movie money, not yachts and penthouses, but enough. Enough to move your mother out of the apartment with the broken heating. Enough to wear clothes that fit and eat at restaurants without checking the right side of the menu first. You carry cash the way other men carry credit scores, as proof of something, as identity. You eat well, you drink well. The neighborhood treats you with a deference that feels at 23 like the closest thing to respect you've ever touched. The social club becomes your office and your living room and your university. You learn things there that no school teaches. How to read a room in 3 seconds. How to say nothing and mean everything. How to make a man believe you like him while simultaneously making him understand that your goodwill is conditional and the conditions are non-negotiable. You also learn something harder, that the lifestyle has a carrying cost nobody advertises. The cash that fills your pockets also fills the pockets of lawyers, because men in your line of work develop relationships with criminal defense attorneys the way other men develop relationships with dentists, regular appointments, uncomfortable ones. You learn that the surveillance van that's been parked on Mulberry Street for 3 weeks isn't a coincidence. You learn to change your phone every 60 days. You learn to say nothing on any device that you wouldn't say in open court, because one day you might. You learn to sleep lightly. That one you didn't have to be taught. There's a job that changes the math. Every man in this life has one. A specific moment where the abstract becomes concrete and you can no longer perform the trick of not seeing what you're doing clearly. Yours comes on a Wednesday in March. A crew from a rival outfit has been moving product through a neighborhood your organization controls. Not a misunderstanding, a deliberate test to see how you'll respond. Your response is not optional. The response is decided by men 3 levels above you, and your role in it is specific and non-negotiable. You drive to a warehouse in a part of the city that looks forgotten. There are 4 of you. What happens inside takes 11 minutes. On the drive back, nobody speaks. The city moves around you, ordinary and indifferent, pedestrians walking dogs, a delivery truck double parked, a school bus making its rounds. And you are separated from all of it by a membrane you can't name. You are in the same world as these people, and you are not. The nothingness you felt after your first collections is back, but this time it has weight. This time it sits in your chest, like something you swallowed that won't go down. You go home, you shower, you sit at your kitchen table until 5 in the morning, not thinking about what happened, because thinking about it directly is impossible. Instead, you think about your mother's apartment, the one you moved her out of, the broken heating, the way she looked when you handed her the keys to something better. You use that thought the way a drowning man uses a rope that's too short. You reach for it anyway. The FBI doesn't announce itself. It accumulates. It starts as a feeling, the kind of low-frequency awareness that men in your life develop the way fishermen develop a feel for weather. Something is different. A car you've seen before in a place it has no reason to be. A face at the bar that doesn't drink the way a man who came to drink drinks. A source inside another crew mentions a federal task force and a name. Your name, not your street name. Your actual name, middle initial included. The organization's response is calculated. You get moved, not relocated, just repositioned. Different collections, different routes, less visibility on the street. Carmine tells you to take a vacation. You spend 3 weeks in Florida at a cousin's house doing nothing, which is somehow the most exhausting thing you've ever done. When you come back, 2 things have changed. The task force is still active, and one of your crew, a man you've worked alongside for 4 years, a man you've eaten Sunday dinner with, has had a quiet conversation with a prosecutor. You don't know this yet. You'll find out the way everyone in this life finds out eventually. Too late to matter. They come at 6 in the morning because they always come at 6 in the morning. 4 cars, 8 agents, a warrant that covers every room in your apartment, and the storage unit registered in your mother's name. You don't run. Running is for men who haven't thought it through, and you've thought about this morning. In the abstract, at 4 a.m., at kitchen tables. More times than you can count. You put your hands up. You get dressed. You don't say a word, which is the only correct response, and the one that took years to understand. The charge is read like a summary of the last 6 years of your life, organized and indexed by people who had nothing to do but watch you. The prosecutor's offer comes 3 weeks later through your attorney, who costs $400 an hour and is worth every cent. Cooperate. Names, dates, operations. In exchange, 15 years instead of the 40 that the charges carry. Your attorney lays it out without emotion, because that's what you pay him for. You sit in that room and you understand for the first time the full geometry of the position you've been in since you were 17 years old and standing on a corner with a Sprite, watching a block for $50. This is where that moment leads. This room, this table, this choice. You don't cooperate. Not because you're loyal to men who would make the opposite decision without hesitation. You know that. You don't cooperate because cooperation requires saying names in a room, and some things once done cannot be undone. Some doors. You know about doors.